everyone, warm welcome to TCC Admissions Roundtable for Fall 2021 and Fall 2022. Just about TCC, basically we are a certified global admissions advisory venture founded by experienced and passionate individuals with top degrees in their respective fields. We provide aptitude tests, early advising, profile and resume building, test preparation and admission guidance for more than 10 countries and 1200 plus global universities for undergrad, masters, MBA and EMBA program. Over the years, we have counseled and serviced 1000 plus students with a 99.9% satisfaction rate. And we have also helped students in securing good scholarships. Our higher education guidance covers a blend of mentorship expertise and technology where we digitize the college application experience using AI and ML. Okay, this is how we help students. We help students with their career assessments. We help them build their profile through test prep, partnering programs and advising on extracurricular activities. We help them with admission guidance and application support for colleges and programs across the world. We also help them with visas, loans, travel arrangements, and all other necessary arrangements. This is how we help school counselors and students. We regularly conduct webinars on topics like choosing the right university and course, test preparation, tips and information, how to write a strong recommendation letter, profile and resume building, how to write a strong essay and personal statements, and also with admission and application guidance. We also conduct alumni talks. We conduct a series of alumni talks from various universities. And we are also launching a magazine called Education Digital Magazine called iGrad. These are some of our success stories in test preparations, test prep scores, and also we have helped students to get into top universities across the world. Mr. Dhaval needs no introduction. He's our CEO and founder. He has 17 plus years of experience in education field. He is an alumni of University of Michigan and Columbia University. He is currently pursuing his executive MBA from Cornell University. And also he is the president of University of Michigan Indian Alumni Association. We also have with us my colleague, Ms. Bosky. She's the assistant editor and communication specialist. Today we have with us Ms. Megha Srivastav from York University, Canada. Hi, Megha. Welcome to the roundtable. We have with us Ms. Anushri Patil from University of Bridgeton. Welcome, Anushri. We will be joined by Ms. Kajri in another 10-15 minutes. She is from University of Sydney. And we have with us Mr. Sagar from University of Queensland. Hi, Sagar. Welcome to the session.
Thank you.
The participating schools, we have Ms. Sheetal from Witty Group of Schools. We have Ms. Manisha and Ms. Divya from Oak Ridge Internationals. We have Ms. Anudhya. She will be joining us in next 10 minutes. She's just having some student meeting. She's from SVKM JV Parekh International School. We will be joined by Ms. Rita from JBC and International Borivali and Ms. Aparna from CMS Mahanagar. Now I would like to invite my colleague, Ms. Bosky, to just share something about the digital magazine iGrad. Bosky, hi.
Thank you. Thank you, Rupal. Hello, friends. I'm Bosky. I have been with the media industry for the past 15 years. I have worked with publications like Times of India, Economic Times, DNA, and most recently Free Press Journal. And now I have joined TCC, and it's an honor actually. So we are actually launching iGrad. It's a magazine. It's a monthly magazine, digital magazine, which we bring out like a voice for higher education. See, we have lots of information about higher education. About actually, if you go search for anything on internet, it's there. But how do we filter that? How do we know that if it is actually helping the students? So this is the platform where we will be giving a dedicated information right from admissions or visa applications, scholarships. So any doubt, any issue a student has, it's here for him or her to understand. At the same time, it's also a very good platform where counselors and the school, universities, and colleges can interact with the student. It's a platform basically where these three components can come together and raise their issues and also sort out their issues. I'm talking about the concerns we have. You know, they're like right now, Dhaval and all of you guys were talking about scholarship, these visa restrictions and COVID problems. This is here where we can actually talk about that. And this is a direct channel which will actually help students and counselors and the universities to come together and address these issues. That's actually our plan. And we would really love if you guys can come together and write for us here and also guide our students here. It will be actually a good platform for the counselors and the universities also to share their views to the students. It's like a direct, you can directly talk to them through our magazine. So again, thank you, Rupal, for introducing me. And I would hand over to you again.
Okay, thank you so much, Bosky. So basically, agenda for today is, just to share some general updates that we have gathered over the last 1 year. Then we will have our colleagues from university share their experience on the year gone by, that is the admissions for fall 2021. What were the admission requirements and what are the expectations for fall 2022? Then we will request our colleagues from schools, the counselors, to share their student outcomes for fall 2021, views on the student behavior for fall 2022, and if they have any questions regarding the admission requirements. Now I would like to invite Mr. Dhaval. He will be, moderating this webinar today. Dhaval, over to you.
Hi, thank you. Thanks, Rupal, and thanks, Bosky. That was wonderful. And thank you, everyone, for making it today. I know that we are still missing out on a few other participants, and I guess that, we were told that some of them are rushing from one to the other, and we wanted to make sure we don't make any other timing changes because we had already promised it to everyone else. So we thought it'll be great to kind of engage initially, and by 7, I guess, then the others would also be able to join us. I'll just kind of go through, we have a couple of slides. I'll just kind of go through how sort of the applications have been over this time period. We've more or less covered 4 countries. One is the US, one is Canada, UK, and Australia. And that's what we've seen today also, that, most of the university representatives are from these countries. So I'll just go through US, and we've actually seen the number of applications across in the US being actually much higher for this year. So we've seen about, even though you will see a list over here where Harvard has seen about 42% of an increase, New York University has seen probably about a 20% increase, and California has seen about a 16%, Boston about 10%. So the reason also we looked at these is, of course, this is where you see a large amount of, international applications, especially Indian applications. And overall, we've seen about a 30% rise of applications from India as well, and actually a decline from China by about 18%. This year's been a very challenging year. and I'm sure that even the schools themselves would probably know and be able to share how their students have sort of done. But we've seen that it's been, quite a challenge in terms of admissions. Many students who've been very competitive in a sense have not been able to make it directly. They've been on wait lists, or they had surprises in terms of what schools they have actually gotten into and they didn't. So it's been a bit of a challenging year. That being said, we are seeing many US universities offering to make sure that they have vaccines provided to their students before they start. So US overall seems to be positive. There are no travel restrictions. There are just cautionary restrictions in terms of travel, which I think they put across saying that you should not travel to India for the next 2 years, but they haven't stopped the students from coming over. As a matter of fact, many of them have already said in-campus classes will start from September. So it seems fairly positive as far as US universities is concerned. Of course, it also depends on what state, where it is that you would actually be going. Because by September, they're seeing many states also sort of being vaccinated to an extent of almost 60 to 70%, which is fairly good in terms of numbers. So that would be for the, can we move to the next slide? So that's sort of a quick update here. I don't have access to the slide. If someone can move it to the next. Thank you. Great. So as far as UK is concerned, we have about, so more than 570,000 students accepted. What we have seen is university acceptance rates in the UK went up almost 3%. That was 2020. We've seen on an average 12% students accepted to Cambridge, and conditional offers are made to 1 in 12 applicants on average. And the most competitive degrees in UK are business and science. But UK universities saw a 9% increase in the number of undergraduate students from outside the UK and the EU, which already give us an indication that, again, the number of applications have gone up, whether it is undergraduate or postgraduate. We've seen numbers actually growing in the UK. And I'm sure Anushri would be able to also talk about that, in more detail. Going further to the next slide. Okay, so we have post-COVID UK visa travel requirements. So it's saying India will be added to the red list for the travel. UK visa and immigration will continue to process and return non-visit visa cases. They're still accepting all applications, but will pause issuing visit and transit visas while the travel ban remains in place. So this is what we understand. UK visa application centers will continue to operate as local situation allows, but are likely to run on reduced hours, reduced appointment, and reduced staffing. Students can travel to the UK and need to hotel quarantine for 10 days as per government guidance. The bills would have to be borne by them. So this is how much we've understood as far as the UK ban is concerned. Again, I feel Anushri would be in a better position in some ways to tell you more about that. Moving further. Great, thank you. So post-COVID USA visa travel requirements, VAC appointments for biometrics and for interview, waiver document drop-off for the US in Delhi will be honored this week, but visa interview appointments are cancelled throughout April 23rd until further notice. The number of colleges and universities that will require students to be fully vaccinated is actually going up, as I just went through. In just the last few days, Duke, Brown, Northeastern, University of Notre Dame, Syracuse, Ithaca all announced that students returning campus must be fully vaccinated. And I think, however, it's saying that this will reflect the Indian students is, so now the only thing is that in India, if your students are above 18, because the new norms are 18 plus. So I think that as long as the student is 18 plus, I think they might be able to get that vaccination done beforehand. Now, we don't know while they actually go to the visa, while they go to the embassy for the visa, Are they going, are they going to ask them to be vaccinated already? That's another question that we have. We are not sure about that. We will probably know about that in some time, in due time, if that is actually a requirement that many of them are going to ask, because the I-20 is also, while being issued, which is a document which you need while pursuing your visa, to get your visa, that document is being released at this point in time, but universities want to make sure that the international students are also vaccinated. If they don't have control over that in their home country, they're actually making sure that the students can get vaccinated when they come in. So we're actually waiting to hear back from some of these universities on that. Going to the next slide. So, and I feel that Megha would be definitely in a better position to talk about how things have been in Canada as a whole. But we've actually seen, that the number of applications in Canada have actually gone up. The admission rates, of course, that's why for universities have probably gone down, because the number of students have, by itself gone up this whole year. I know that many of them have been getting their, admission decisions as we speak. And so the total number and how actually, each of the universities have done will probably be more, will probably be available, I would say, more by the end of the month or by, the next month. But again, you're seeing that there's been a reasonable amount of applications or growth in applications in Canada as well from India. I don't think students are at this point in time averse to applying. And again, I think in the case of Canada as well, most schools don't have SAT as a prerequisite, or they've always had that as an optional, sort of a test score that you can, that you can submit. But it's essentially, we've seen that Canada has seen a fairly large number of, applications going in to universities across. And again, I would probably ask Megha to talk more about those numbers as we move ahead. Next slide, please.
Hello?
Yeah, can you move to the next slide, please? Thank you. So I think that this is where we'll probably also share that in Australia, we've actually seen a fairly large rise in terms of number of applications, probably a larger rise in postgraduate applications than undergraduate. But I think that's something which I would feel Sagar and Kajari both would be able to talk about in terms of numbers and how, Australia is actually doing. From what I understand is that, as far as domestic students are concerned, the universities are open. Students are actually on campus. Things seem to be doing fairly well now. They've also have a bubble started with, New Zealand. So travel's still okay without quarantine. So a lot of these things are actually positive signs. Of course, as far as the country overall allowing, to open their borders for international students, I think there is an optimism right now that, and there's a possibility that for fall that might be actually one of the things that is put in the exception list. And so that's actually a positive. So we're actually seeing that Australia is still seeing a strong sort of student, interest. Though it's a little contrary to what we actually saw in between, where they were talking about a decline in terms of numbers. But I feel that, student numbers are seeing, sort of a positive trend as well. And it's been the fourth largest in terms of the number of students that actually go out of India as well. So we feel that it's going to be there to stay. But of course, what I have seen mostly through the season is that many of them are applying to as many countries as they can, and they're open to applying to others as well, so that they understand what their options are in case if the country doesn't open up. So many of them want to be on campus is what we have seen going into the next year. So going to the next slide. Now, this is just showing what is the COVID effect on testing requirements, and what we've actually seen is that as College Board has sort of changed their, the SAT a bit. They've made the essay optional. They have actually done away with the SAT subject tests, and they're actually proposing and encouraging students to take the APs. So many of the ISC, CBSE students can actually, take the APs this year. They've run the APs fairly well. As a matter of fact, they had three, segments for APs. So they had the first half of, May, where they're running the APs, and it's being run across, a number of schools as well. So I know in Bombay, they actually canceled the physical testing for both the SAT and the APs right now, because it was in early sort of May. So that segment is out, but they made all the APs online as well. So they adjusted the students who had to cancel then to actually take them online. And they've done that, for the second half of May. So the online exams for the AP is in second half of May, and then again in June. The only problem that a lot of students face while taking the online exam is that the timetable schedules are a little bit, I would say cumbersome, because it's 1:30 a.m. Sometimes. And so you have to stay up till 4 in the morning to actually take the exam. That could be a little bit of a concern. Is what we've actually seen as far as the APs are concerned. I know Aparna has joined us, and CMS is actually one of the centers, and they actually take care of the APs. So I'm sure she would be in a better situation to. And then the TOEFL is the IBT version, so that actually helps a lot. And that has actually helped students, not worry about then going to the testing centers, because we know that for IELTS, the testing centers had opened up, and students would have to actually go, but then they got, many of them got cancelled. So you still have TOEFL IBT; it's still acceptable. I think most of the universities still accept them. So that's one of the things that you could do, is take the TOEFL IBT, and you need sort of an average score of, I think, so depending on universities, anywhere between 90 to 103, what we've actually looked at. So moving on to the next slide. Yeah, so the AP doesn't replace the SAT. I think, Sheetal, it's that you still have the AP. Exam. It's the AP exam is just an addition. That just shows that the child has taken more interest in that subject matter. And so, the SAT is something that, that's the issue that I've seen in many of the US universities that have actually accepted students, is that still a large portion of them have taken those students who did take the SATs. So if you actually see the acceptance rate for the number of students who took the SAT versus didn't take them, it's almost 70%. Yes, you're advantaged by taking the SAT, especially if you're applying to the US. Great. So now at this point, I think what I'll do is I'll invite, each one of the universities to sort of talk about, how they're seeing things on their end, and maybe share their experience for admissions for fall of this year. Some of them, there's admissions are possibly ongoing, and so they'll share how the year has been, how campuses are, how the country is sort of reacting to this, and what kind of optimism do we have moving forward? And then maybe what are some of the other things they're doing in terms of online sessions? Are there any changes to that? Maybe we can start by actually having, Sagar and then Kajari. I'll move on one after the other, and then I'll talk to Megha and then Anushri.
Okay, thanks, Dhaval, for the, setting the scene for this one. I think for Australia, generally, like how you mentioned, I can talk mostly about UQ, and the others that you've shown. I think there has been a significant rise in terms of applications. I'm not sure how that translated for a lot of universities when it comes to final acceptances or conversions. We for ourselves, we saw a gain of, students accepting or commencing in 2022, and even for the intake that we just finalized, so the semester 1 of 2021. I think stepping back to how it all started, how the university started, looking at this. I think deep inside, I think all the universities were thinking about some form of online, component. I think the COVID scenario just catalyzed the whole thing of immediately, getting into this particular setting. Uh, I also personally, I mean, that's my personal belief that it's been a good filter for I think for the sector to see who was able to immediately cope up, how the infrastructure was, what kind of human resource are we talking about? Like as soon as this happened, I believe within 3 weeks, everyone at UQ was trained for online delivery. I mean, there were massive trainings, that happened of what teaching looks like and what even learning looks like to be online. So I think the first phase for us was, more towards getting ready for what, it's going to look like. Immediately, the second phase, we started thinking was how do we educate markets which are not aligned to online learning. We had no idea of how long will this go on. And I think immediately we started working with our stakeholders, schools, institutions, and even students, trying to make them understand this is a temporary measure. We're not going, for online degrees, but this is how it may look like. We started building a lot of confidence about, how it works. And I think that is one thing I'm sure paid off for all Australian universities to a certain extent. Massive support from government organizations based out of India too, the extension offices. I remember most of the universities working with CBSE, IB, and with our state bodies, trying to do teacher trainings, trying to do student sessions to say this is how it looks like. So I think that education helped us, and I think collectively the universities stood up in terms of realizing that we need to be a little more compassionate on what the student is going through. So one aspect was, of course, financial. So I mean, there was a lot of flexibility in terms of scholarship bursaries that would have come in. There were rebates of the online component, but also more importantly, there were other factors like non-financial factors, like uh, students. That time we were uncertain of the CBSE results, or let's say the IB results. I think for UQ, and I'm sure other universities did follow, we said you can submit whatever documents you need to by 30th of October, but commence like any other student, forget the worry that you don't have your documents. Till the time your predicted scores or whatever you have in hand meets certain requirements, commence with what you have. And I think that created a very positive sense of at least the pool that we had, to say that, let's not worry about it. Let's take one step at a time. So students, we saw that as very positive sentiment, coming across from the pool. The government responded. They came out with very positive post-study work, rules. Unlike many other countries, Australia said whatever you do online gets counted to your post-study work, regulations. But they didn't put a limit or a cap that you have to be in the country by so and so, or this much part of the portion or the course has to be done. I think that helped. Also, the visas kept coming for students. So, I mean, the students are ready that they've commenced, they have a visa. That's between the two countries to open the borders and they can travel. So I think that's been one sentiment again that has helped us. So I think the preparation of the university, educating the market, and then putting some kind of policies out which were student friendly, did help us, gain that kind of traction. What, we're talking about higher application for certain universities. Yes, we had higher conversions too. So I mean, personally, we've been satisfied with, how the last two intakes went. Now, of course, the coming intake is a bit of a trouble, to be honest. I mean, I think students are getting tired. There are countries like UK, Canada, of course, being extra proactive when it comes to the student sentiment, and that's what we feel will be a bigger challenge. Initially, we really I think we're riding very high on the sentiment that see how Australia and New Zealand has controlled COVID. So the health factor was one of our key USPs that we were telling parents and students that see, I mean, this is one country which has no COVID now. Even if you look at Australia as on date, campuses are open, students are going to campus, everything is normal, no restrictions. But then that's somehow fading as a USP, I feel, because students are stuck. They don't really want to know what's happening there till the time they get an option to move out. So I think that's going to be one challenge for all of us. I think Kajri will have more to share. But then again, I think most of the universities are trying their best to still keep the pipeline warm, to educate them that, they're not, I mean, the kind of opportunity cost they may have if they try to defer again. Uh, the other thing is that even Indian institutions are shut, or even if they provide the online experience, is it as good as what you may still get, from the kind of universities that we are talking about. So that's that we have kept in mind. There's something called, for example, just an example, we're doing something called a starter program. So that's a 4-month program where it gives a capsule of the experience to a student for any particular program. So we say, come and experience what your life is going to be in an online degree for now, online component for now. And it doesn't talk about academics, but also how do you mix with students, how do you have social engagement online. And I think that's one way to just give them a feeler of, it's not like just a Zoom session, like how we're talking, but it's much more engaging. There are different platforms. So I'm sure that's what's happening. And the expectation is, I mean, we're just waiting for the governments to, come out with some kind of policies. I think that'll be a major driver for the student pipeline to, make a decision. So, yeah.
Great. No, thanks, Sagar. That's very informative. I think at least to start with, I think it's great that you're right about the fact that students are having this sort of factor now where they just they just want to get on campus. They really just they're just waiting for that. So I feel that if you have any positive news on that side, or maybe if the government talks about vaccinations or anything of that sort, I mean, I assume that Australia could be vaccinated faster and sooner than almost any other country. Considering the fact that the population is much lower, whether it be UK or whether it is Canada, I feel Australia could use the vaccines and move that further. But I don't know how that, or the politics of that, is really going to work at this point. But I'm hopeful and optimistic that it does, because I think I feel every country is going to need those vaccines if you want to open the borders.
No, 100%. I think that vaccine thing is also in discussion. I think it's a little delayed as compared to what they had in mind. But then I mean, it's just a cautious country. They're trying to be very careful. And I think one sentiment is also that because there's no coronavirus there, do we really need it? Is the second sentiment that, is coming there. But we're all hoping that, things will start moving maybe in a month or two.
Great. Thanks for sharing that, Sagar. And over to you, Kajari.
Thank you, Dhaval. Actually, Sagar has made it very easy for me because I have to just pick up the threads from where he left. You see, just echoing the thoughts, basically, there are positive news now coming out of Australia. In the last week or so, New South Wales government, for instance, has put out a plan to bring out, international students as a pilot into the country. And some of them have already started it. So we're talking of, some universities in Sydney who will have 10, 20 students coming from, Singapore and other countries which have now phased out Corona. Our challenge is dual, actually. So obviously we are at a nasty phase right now. I mean, I was just looking at certain conversations, which is a professional group, but unfortunately a member there is now seeking medical help for his family member. And it just goes on to show how dire the situation is. So when we speak to candidates or students for this semester, and the usual question is the border going to open up? We don't have an answer. But one is hopeful that by June, I think the government will have to take a stance. Okay, so this, as Sagar was saying, this has gone on for too long. We have already had 2 intakes which have gone online. So this intake is make or break, so it is survival now. Not so much for universities per se, because we have to remember universities like Sydney or UQ or others, they have a large domestic population. So I can speak for Sydney. If you have 70,000 students coming to us every year, 50,000 are domestic, but 20,000 are international. So, but the point is that international students are very important for Australia. So I'm sure the government will now have to sit back and take notice. And you're right in saying
this is a country which has more or less eradicated corona, so they're not very keen on the vaccine. But having said that, we have just seen the news last evening. I think now somebody in New Zealand has corona because he was a cleaner of one of the Australian airlines at the airport. Now, this is tricky. So they will have to find a way. And as far as we are concerned, we have actually set out a few fee bursaries in place, especially keeping in mind, and this is selectively for certain countries, including India, because of how things have been going on. I mean, we did not give any rebate, to be fair, I have no problem in saying this. Our international degrees, whether it is online or face-to-face, have cost us pretty much, cost a student pretty much the same in either versions. But then we are now cognizant of the fact that the pandemic has hit students very badly, India especially. And this is public knowledge that, while the overall applications to Australian universities have not seen any decline, the uptake from India has seen a decline, simply because Indian students actually want to go to the university campus and experience the education. Now, and also paying capacity, we are 20 times less affluent than China. So let's face it. So all of these have been taken into account, and we are bringing forth a lot of measures to ensure that Indian students come and study with us. In terms of what we are expecting, so obviously this examination cancellations will have an impact, because Sydney has a certain requirement for students from national boards where they are expected to submit their final results before they are offered unconditionals, and then they can go on to take up admissions. So we are still working, because we will have to mitigate the challenge that we are facing, but we don't have an answer as yet to that. Our expectation is that fall 22 will be, it's a year away. So one is hopeful that things are going to get back to normal. As far as we are concerned, we are gearing up to both a face-to-face as well as a remote learning possibility, because obviously, as Sagar was saying, those students, international and domestic, who are in Australia are able to attend the classes in person. But having said that, the ones who are outside are stuck. This has actually put a huge pressure on the academics, because it's one thing to teach online all the time, and it's another to have a physical lesson, and also having to convert that into online mode, and also to ensure that both of them are satisfactory. An ex-CEO, CIO of Sydney had once said, being creative is not restricted to arts faculty alone. I think we have experienced that in the last 2 semesters, when I think Sydney went out of the way to design so many things to make it conducive for students to, go on to learn online. So I think that's what I would have to say.
Thanks, Kajari. I think that if there are any questions that, particularly that the counselors have, I would suggest that they put that also in the chat box, and then maybe we can take some of those questions as well as we move along. So moving on to Megha. Megha, you can tell us more about Canada also, and tell us more about what are some of the things that because I know Canada has also seen this on and off, right? I know Ontario is kind of a lockdown right now, and it's seen these sways of, but they're very quick. I think that the government's been very quick at shutting things down and then moving back in and getting vaccines in. So I think I'm quite amazed by the velocity of which that they've taken their actions, and they've done a lot also for international students. They've actually made sure that even if you're doing a 1-year course, they're giving 18 months of work visa. So there's a lot of changes, and I think they've done a lot for international students as a whole. So maybe if you want to just sort of talk about that, it'll sort of give a better understanding for this year and going ahead. How do you see it?
Thanks, Dhaval. And again, a big hello to everyone, because I think once we started the conversation, most of our colleagues were joining in. So, Dhaval, I would say from a Canadian perspective and talking specifically, because I would not be aware about the numbers in terms of applications and conversions for other universities. But if we look at York in particular, we've definitely seen an increase in the applications. Of course, the conversions have been decent. They could have been better. But then again, that's driven by a lot of factors. Also, when when I've been talking to my colleagues from the community colleges, I think that's the sector that's been severely hit, because like as Kajari was saying, that just like Australia, even in Canada, the student is looking for that opportunity to not only come and study, but also to maybe work part-time to get some, experience outside the classroom. So, that's the kind of feedback that I've been getting from my colleagues who work for community colleges. For universities, I think it was, like you rightly put, the Canadian government was very fast to take some actions. And I think there was a lot of damage control that was done. So we saw an increase in the applications. We saw that we guys were reaching out, the conversions were, I was expecting more. Like every Canadian institution, we were expecting a certain growth. Maybe we didn't see it, but it was not that bad. Now, I think it's because of various factors. Number one is definitely because, from the very beginning, the Canadian government has been extremely proactive. They've rolled out, a series of steps to support international students. So ranging from, introducing the 2-stage visa process, to telling students that, okay, you don't have your visa, doesn't matter, you can start your classes online. Going on, assuring students that, it's fine, even if you do your complete program, from a Canadian institution online, you would be still considered for post-study or, work permit, which again is a very crucial element. Every international student who's looking at Canada is, definitely looking at that particular aspect. And the recent announcement, of rolling out residency streams for close to about 40,000 international graduates. So, like you rightly said, on and off, these announcements were coming in. These were actually giving a lot of confidence, not only to the agent partners, but also, to the students, to the parents. At the same time, I also feel that the Canadian institutions were also taking a series of initiatives. Like right from the time COVID struck us, all of us were, getting onto the online platforms. There was a constant channel of communication that was maintained with the students. There were specific helplines that were rolled out. Specifically in the case of York, there were so many virtual events that were, held. There were so many drop-in sessions that was, that were getting organized, and initially when you had that one semester wherein students did the online classes, York was also getting the students who had experience with online classes coming on to webinars and talking about their experience with the students who were looking to get enrolled, in York for the upcoming intakes. Apart from that, talking specifically from York's perspective, and also, this is actually true for other Canadian institutions as well. York was one of the first few universities to be ready with a COVID readiness plan. So in a way, you require that particular plan to be approved by the government in order to plan a safe return to the campus for fall 2021, and the borders opened up. There was a lot of support given to the students in terms of flexibility, in terms of submission of the documents. York recently also announced that, it has plans to going back in person, for fall 2021. So I think all these kind of announcements, the constant communication, the support, I think the image of Canada, like if you look at the last announcement that came out, with the residency streams, it clearly communicates that Canada is telling the international students that we don't only want you to come and study here, we want you to come here, earn, make a living and stay. So, that's also sent out a lot of confidence into this segment. Of course, like I initiated, like when we started this conversation, I was telling you that maybe a month and a half back, the outlook was looking really positive, and there was a lot of excitement. I was talking to my colleagues, and most of the universities have announced plans to go back in person, and also have a blended version of, delivery of classes wherein the smaller classes can be delivered online. So if you're looking at a group of students, a class which is of a size of 25 and below, those would be definitely looked at being delivered, in person. But the bigger classes, every university is looking at a possibility of having the virtual format also. There's also talks about having that flexibility that if I'm an international student, I'm not comfortable in terms of traveling, can I continue doing the online, version of my studies? So around that particular topic also, there's a lot of discussions that are going on. So I also feel that, in this particular period of 3 weeks, a lot has changed, that positive outlook, now the environment is really volatile, and amidst all the talks that we are talking about, increase in applications, the confidence that the government is giving to the international students that, listen, we're going to take care of you. There have been challenges also. I remember since last year, I can speak on behalf of all my colleagues here as well, because, like Sheetal ma'am pointed out in the beginning, and very rightly, there have been economic setbacks, that families have suffered. We've been flooded with questions about, why do we pay so much for an online course? Are you planning to give us some tuition cut? There have also been talks about the safety. Because I'm a parent as well, and my primary question to maybe a university rep would be that what are the kind of safety measures that you have at your university right now, and also the fact that the students are tired, so I have also been interacting with a lot of students who started their journey last year, and to understand as to how they are feeling. And a major segment of them also feel that we want in-class experience, that's something which is extremely important to us. So I would say, yes, the outlook was positive. I think the future definitely presents, a series of challenges, and these are not just restricted to one destination. I believe my colleagues from UK, Australia, US are all experiencing that. Like I told you in the very beginning, I foresee it to be a more difficult year as compared to the last year. But at the same time, while wrapping up, I would also want to take a moment and appreciate, all the efforts that, we all have been putting in. Because I know it's been hard. It's been hard doing all these online sessions back to back. And there is also a Zoom fatigue that's kicked in for sure. It's been, I think, now more than a year. But to take that moment to actually appreciate and applaud, all the efforts that we've been doing to keep that chin and smile up, and coming to platforms like these wherein we are sharing insights and we are talking about what's next. With the recent announcement of, CBSE, with the examinations for grade 12 and IB and British curriculum cancelling their examinations, again, there's a new wave of questions that have come in. Students are so anxious. They want to know what's happening. So I think the key would be to maintain that constant communication with them, because they definitely need to see messages coming from the universities regularly, and keep that outlook positive. Though it's going to be a difficult year, but I think it's time to also pull up ourselves once again, like we did last year, and to keep going. That's how I would like to sum up my note, Dhaval.
Thank you, Megha. And as a matter of fact, I was just going to resonate all of this, that Sagar and Kajari and, Megha, you have just mentioned is, this is a time where, yes, I think that, India as a whole, and we are seeing a second wave coming through, and I'm sure we will get through it. We'll get through it in another 2 months, and I'm sure that, we all will come back together and understand that, we need that safety net. I know that people do have economic setbacks, but I feel they also want to take logical decisions. I have seen myself, I've seen, UQ and I've seen University of Sydney also come out with scholarships, and, they've been also awarding scholarships and coming out with some, aids. Maybe I would say that if universities do have certain aid that they've given to students in case they had such a situation. I know that many US universities went across to alumni, and alumni made a fund, and then they actually gave money to many students to travel and things of that sort. So I've seen a lot of this that has actually happened. And maybe if any one of you all want to talk about those things also, that would also help, because I know that universities who are so invested in, in the students who are going from India, they have really done everything possible. I have seen every single one of them go out of their way to see if they can actually support the students and make sure that they can get, started, or if they have to get to campus, and if someone wants to go to campus. I have personally seen students even getting their visa for Canada, in these last 1 or 2 months. And those who are taking online classes have actually gone. Even students to the US, they've actually taken their visa, they've gone. Many of my students have got vaccinated. So it's been a positive experience, I feel. And I can tell you this, whatever you can do, you can't shake that student's, spirit. If he wants to go and he wants to be on campus, he's going to make sure that he will walk his parents through all of these things. And I'm sure that he will get to the, to the other side. But we've seen a lot of parents also at the same time who have been facing a whole lot of these, critical moments, and they reach out to us. And, I'm very fortunate in many ways that, we've always got all the support from, all of you all in case if you have any questions or anything of that sort. And again, to the counselors, please put any of your questions that you have, and we will cover your experiences also as we move ahead. So maybe it's time for me now to, invite our next, panelist, Anushri Patil, to talk about the UK.
Hi, everybody. Good evening. And I will try to keep this short for you. I know that it's quite late. And as Megha rightly mentioned, it's Zoom fatigue that everybody has been suffering from more than COVID, if you've not already got it. To begin with, the University of Brighton has come to India quite late as opposed to a lot of UK universities. We started our international office in India only in the late 2019. So the entire of last year was completely something that we were not expecting. We did not plan for anything like this, but I am happy to say that we were successful in getting a good number of applications as well as enrollments. So just to give you a perspective, we got a 300% rise in applications from just India last year during the peak of COVID. We went from having 8 Indian students in 2019 to having 45 above students for September 2020. And we started our first intake for January in 21 and had roughly 15 students from India. So as a university, we have been fortunate and we have been welcomed immensely by the Indian population. And I'm really glad to have been working with this university for the past 1 year and a half. The university as such, like I said, we weren't prepared for any of this. We were only focused on, making the university a larger place for people to get accepted. And that's why last year in March, when the UK government announced that they would go into lockdown, everything was shut down and students were asked to either stay in their dorms, continue their classes online, or they were given the option of moving back home. However, moving on from March 2020 to now, we have made immense developments in terms of delivering classes online, hybrid, as well as in person. So let me just give you a brief idea of what we've done over the year and a half. So in terms of academic mitigations, the first step that we decided was, last year, we did have students taking the exam, but we were uncertain when the results would come. So the academic team stepped in and said, whatever documents they can submit, be it an undergraduate student or a postgraduate student, we would try to give them an offer if the documents seem legitimate and if the students seem genuine. And that's how we got a really good number of students coming in for the September 20 intake. The second thing that we did is we launched scholarship for all international students. We wanted to ensure that every student that was coming from abroad at least got some percentage of scholarship. And that's why we kept the limit at £2,500 being the maximum. And instead of keeping it merit-based, because sometimes we understood that students can face a problem when they are giving the exam and may not necessarily get the percentage that we would probably want them to have. And that's why we decided that the first thing we would do is the student should have been an offer holder at the University of Brighton. And secondly, they would also have to write scholarship essay. So it's just like 500 to 1,000 words that the student needs to write, convincing us why they should get a scholarship. It's a practice that we continue to honor, and it's a practice that we want to continue for the rest of the intakes as well, because we want to understand your perspective, and we understand that marks are just a part of what makes you you. You know, your experiences, your intelligence, and your whatever aspirations are for the future is more important than what marks you've secured in an examination. Other than scholarship, we also realized that we would receive a lot of refunds, and that's why we decided that any student who was facing any circumstance that was beyond their control and could not come to the university can apply for refunds and ask us to defer their application to the next intake. So the refund would ideally be processed in 30 days, depending on, you know, international banks, and the student would automatically be transferred to the next intake, maybe January or September, depending on which year we offer that particular course. Which intake we offer that particular course. We also offered an extension on student arriving on campus. So historically, the university begins the September intake in the last week of September. Keeping in mind that the situation would result in a lot of students not being able to travel in time and reach campus, we decided to give them an extension of up to the last week of October. And if the student was still unable to join us by then, they could start their courses online and reach the university at least by the end of the first semester, so that, you know, they have enough time to begin their courses, start the program, and understand what university is, and then come to the university when the timing and the scheduling is better. So as I said, the September 2020 intake was completely hybrid, with part of it being delivered in person and part of it being delivered online. However, the situation in UK took a turn for worse around January, and that's why we had to schedule all of our classes to be online for the second semester for the students. But thankfully, the UK government has been very supportive for universities, and they decided to start with reducing the lockdown restrictions. So from the 8th of March, number of courses in the university that require students to have access to studios or laboratories have become partially open. So if a student needs to use these facilities, they can come to the campus, they can study there and then go back home. We're trying to limit the number of students who can come to campus just to ensure that, you know, productivity does not get affected on either the faculty member or on the student side. But keeping our fingers crossed, looks like the UK government is planning to open or lift all of the COVID restrictions by the 21st of June. And after that, we are expecting that classes will begin offline completely for September 21 intake. As Dhaval and everybody else knows that the UK government has put India on a red list, which essentially means if you're traveling from India, you need to quarantine yourself. That is a 10-day compulsory institutional quarantine, and it would be in a designated hotel that the government would have selected for you. The quarantine charges are not that much. They are around £1,500 to £1,700, but obviously a student needs to keep in mind that the quarantine is for their benefit as well as the benefit of everybody else who they would be interacting in the long run. So though it's not something that an Indian student would want to do, it's just a precautionary thing that is essential for them to do. Not yet sure if we would be vaccinating all of our students who will be coming in this year and who have been on campus for the past few years, but I'm sure that everybody knows that UK has an exceptional healthcare system. The NHS has been wonderful in terms of providing healthcare throughout the 2020 pandemic. And I'm expecting that they would be just as supportive for any student who comes in later on. Healthcare services for any student who gets COVID or needs to get tested are completely free of charge for international students, just to ensure that, you know, there's no bias, there is no restrictions on them, and they are not worried about the costing when it comes to getting tested and then taking the medicines. You do pay health surcharge, so that that's everything that gets covered when you travel to the UK as a student. We also reduced our deposit amount, which used to be £3,000, which has now become £1,500. So this is just to ensure that students are able to budget themselves. Just like Ajri mentioned, unfortunately, we were not one of the universities to have reduced the tuition fees because the classes were online. And though that may be seen as not a very supportive move, but we've tried to be as supportive when it comes to, delivering quality education to students throughout the online semesters. Think I've covered all my points. I'll just give you a quick brief about what we plan to do, like what all has changed with the university. So for Jan intake, we had recognized Duolingo as one of the exams that the students could take to meet the English language requirements. However, that has now been cancelled. There was a lot of discrepancy in the score that we received for the students, and that was noticed across multiple universities in the UK, and it's just not a very reliable tool of your English equivalency. So we prefer taking Ielts, or we can prefer TOEFL, IBT, any exam that you can take online. Other than that, we've also started, like I mentioned, a Jan intake, and starting from September 2020, we have started our business courses to have a placement year for postgraduate studies. So how this works is, initially the classes used to be for 1 year. Now the student can apply for a placement route. So they study for 1 year. The second year is a placement year where the university assists you in getting the job. We will help you from the moment you start making your CV all the way till getting the offer letter. And it would be a completely paid placement. So the student can expect a salary of somewhere between 18 to 22,000 pounds annually, which makes it very lucrative. You end up covering your entire tuition fee for the first academic year, as well as the tuition fee that you would have to pay, a nominal charge that you would have to pay during the placement year. We've also started a number of courses in the computing school that also offer the placement year. Additionally, the UK government has started the PSW, which helps students to stay back in the country for 2 years after completing their graduation and seeking jobs. So if there is anything that I've missed out and you would want to know, I would be happy to, connect and answer with you all of those questions.
Great. Thank you so much, Anushree. I think that was a lot of information, and a ton of information, which I'm sure it was helpful for each and every one of them. So now I think this is probably a time we should probably have our counselors to come and talk. I know that when we had started off, we had Sheetal Kapoor talk to us about what she's going through, but we still have to hear about how is your, and Sheetal, maybe you can tell us about how has the year been for your students also? Where is it that, you feel many of them have applied if they did abroad? And, is there any questions? Is there any confusion that you're seeing? Any other questions that you have from our conversation that we've had so far?
Sheetal?
Just checking if you're having any trouble with the audio, Sheetal.
No, I can hear you.
Lovely.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we were just hoping to hear from you, Sheetal, on how this year's been for your students also in terms of the admissions, and where do you see many of them sort of leaning towards? Is there specific countries that they're looking at? Are there any particular questions that you might have after all the interactions that we've had so far?
No, so most of them, it's a very common, it's a norm that most of them look at US or Canada. These are the two hot countries that they look at. Australia has still not figured very largely on their horizon. And now children are looking at UK also. But this was, I'm talking 2 months ago. In January, I had a student who was very keen on going to UK. for to pursue films, to pursue further studies in filmmaking. But now I don't know, it's been, we've been trying to connect with that student and the parent, and again, there's a roadblock. So it's US and Canada that students are looking at.
Okay, so for most of it, and how has the admissions been, for this year?
Not good at all. Not good at all.
So I can imagine, because I feel the number of applications by itself has gone up, tremendously. So I feel that many of them would have sort of struggled. So I don't know if they actually, if many of them then did apply to a decent list with some safety nets also. So I think that would have actually paid off if there were some safety nets, because I know that top schools had a very, it was a big challenge just because of the number of applications, I feel.
Correct. So last year, in fact, we had students, a large number, quite a few students who had migrated. But this year, I haven't had too many students seeking admission.
Okay. And so do you feel that for Australia universities, or, for universities in the UK, have you all had enough, maybe conversations where, students are listening through to university representatives to see maybe, okay. So because I think sometimes the challenge is also, a lot of it comes from maybe the, their peer group, or
Correct.
maybe, from the, are unsure about what sort of makes sense.
Correct.
So I think it's always a good idea to have some more of these conversations, I feel. And one of the idea of, having that today was, in Australia, I think, especially if I look at, University of Sydney and UQ, they both are fairly strong in their areas, but I don't know if they've had any kind of conversations, with your students, but, I would definitely suggest that in the future. And I think, I don't know if you've had a conversation with York before as well. But they're a great school, great university also to consider. So I know many of the students who are looking at top universities might have ended up applying to Toronto, UBC, Waterloo.
We had a few applying for UBC, all right.
Right. So it just tends to happen. And I feel that's also, again, an effect, right? With universities coming here and sort of expanding, their sort of net. I feel also UBC is a bit popular because it's in Vancouver. The weather's a little bit better. So, compared to Toronto, where you'll see, in Ontario, weather-wise, also, I think UBC sees a very diverse, set. You can go for business, you can also go for, psychology, or, other humanity subjects, and you can also go for engineering. So I think it's got a fairly great mix, in terms of, programs. But are there any challenges that, these students have seen in terms of then, traveling to the campuses or traveling to the countries, or at this point in time, might, where do you think now going forward, you feel that some of them might be, more interested? Because I feel that now, looking at the fact that many of them didn't get admission into these US schools, right? Now, now it's going to look more realistic, because the next year is also test optional. The next year is also going to be, again, test blind. So the fact is that, the number of applications this year were probably a bit higher because of the deferrals. And many of them were sort of applying, not as transfer students, but as freshmen again, right? So they deferred the admissions and sort of applying again. So maybe that number is a little bit higher, partly because of that. But then the number through India by itself has gone up by 30%, which is fairly high, right? If you're actually looking at it. So I was just trying to get a sense of where do you feel that, the year will go, because now I think you'll look at the next year applications, right? Even after these go, now you're sort of looking at, preparing them for the next year, and your questions are valid because many of them are going to ask questions about when are these grades going to be available to the students, because they have to eventually, submit these to universities as well, while they have made their selections, and, they need to have these final grades. I think Sagar mentioned that they are also open until getting it by September.
Yes.
And I think the others also, but do you think that you'll have any trouble in getting these, results until, say, July or August, because you need them if they want their visas also, right?
Correct. So also what the sense that we were getting is that now that UK had opened, first there was no work option available in UK. Now that they have opened up the option of the student can stay back and can get a work visa, it did look more lucrative because it's halfway home. When we compare it to US, UK is halfway home. So parents and students were looking at UK also as an option. But okay, now, and this setback is very temporary where UK is not allowing our students to come because of the COVID scenario. This setback is very, very temporary. It's not here to stay. So the sense that we are getting is that yes, students are going to look at UK as another option other than only Canada and US. They are going to look at UK also. And I did have a few queries on the AP scores, which Rahul very promptly, satisfied all the queries. Where if AP, first of all, I wanted to know whether AP is replacing SAT, because that was one major thing that I wanted to know. And fine, I understand that it is not it doesn't replace SAT as such, but subject specific it could be.
Yeah, so I would say that for APs, just so that I can, just mention something about APs, is that APs are actually good for at least CBSE and ISE students to take for sure, simply because it improves their entire application, because it shows that they have actually done, work in that area which they're more interested in also, and it makes it more competitive because the level of learning at the AP is slightly higher.
Okay.
So that's why CBSE, ISE students, if they take the APs, they're going to be definite advantage even in UK universities.
Okay.
So even in the UK, top universities like the Cambridge and Oxford, they typically look at 4 to 5 APs. And for IB or, IGCSE students, for instance, when you're taking the A-levels, you're looking at most of them taking 3 subjects, right? Or some of them are taking, who are very sort of competitive, are taking 4 subjects. But while you are taking those 3 or 4, if there is one that you really otherwise want to focus on, so maybe suppose, you wanted to do business and, you want to take a course which is a little bit more closer to understanding that in your APs, or maybe computers, right? So you have a list of almost 23 exams that actually take place in India through the APs. And since they're online, that's actually a good thing for the students. So even an IB student, for instance, if they've taken at a high level, they've taken chemistry and physics and they can't take biology, and they've taken standard level biology. And then later they realize I'm really interested in biology, they can take an AP in biology.
Okay.
So that's one of the other things as far as AP is concerned. The SAT is good to take for all international students just by itself. If you're still applying to US as a whole, not for Canada, it's not really required. Earlier, one of the things that, some schools used to do, like NYU, for instance, is they used to accept the 3 subject scores of SAT. So SAT had the subject tests. So if you didn't want to take the SAT, then you could take 3 subject tests and that would replace the SAT score. So now that is gone out because you don't have SAT subject tests at all. So now you still take the SAT. It's good to take it because it improves your chances. Even if you have a 1400 out of 1600, it's okay. But it's better to take it than not take the SAT. And then take the APs in addition, but then APs take place only once in a year. And the SAT now has increased. So now it's in August, September, October, and December. So that's also actually gone up quite significantly, if you ask me. So that's what I would say as far as APs. Is there any other questions, Sheetal, that you have on that? And I think Sagar had a point. Sagar, sorry, I saw your message. Please go ahead.
No, I just want to clarify on one of the points that you were making about students needing the documents for visa.
Yeah.
So given the current scenario, like I mentioned, let's say a UQ allows students to give their documents till end of October. Even so there's something called the conditional start. So you can conditionally accept the offer. Based on a conditional acceptance, you can still get a visa. So you'll get a conditional COE from the university and you still get a visa, on the conditional start. So even if the student is waiting and there's no clarity, they can get the admission, they can get the scholarships, they can also get the visa. So just want to make that point in.
Oh, thanks. I'm so glad that you mentioned it, and absolutely that's right. As a matter of fact, I think as far as UK is concerned, and Anushri, I wanted to check with you on this because there's a pre-CAS interview now, which is sort of a new process which they've come up with, right? So maybe if you want to throw some light on how that process, is sort of taking place for the UK as well.
So with the way it's working for the University of Brighton, Dhaval, is that we currently don't have a pre-CAS interview phase in place. We are working towards it because we do understand that we need to maintain a level of authenticity when it comes to students. And that's why we are coming on this bandwagon of having a pre-CAS interview. It's just taking us a little time to figure out, who does these interviews? Would it be somebody from India to ensure there's no time difference? Would it be somebody from UK? Because when the student goes for a visa interview, obviously the person who's taking the interview is not necessarily going to be an Indian. And most probably what happens with students going for visa interview is the dialect, the accent makes a difference. And the fact that you're speaking to somebody who's not the same citizen as you can make the person nervous. So we are trying to figure out how we will be doing this, but I think starting from September 21, if not September 22, we should have pre-CAS interviews in place where we would ask general questions to find out, why the student wants to come to UK, why they want to do this course, what do they want to do afterwards. We do understand that PSW is a very lucrative thing because a lot of students have been waiting to come to the UK, and we do as a university obviously want to support them, but we also need to make sure that everything goes on smoothly.
Great, thank you. Thanks for mentioning that.
Okay.
Sheetal, did you have any questions? Any other questions?
Yeah, I have a question with Ielts. UK and Canada, they would want Ielts scores, right? Now, if a student has done his or her A-levels, then how fair is it to submit the Ielts scores? Shouldn't there be a waiver?
So I think I'll allow Anushri to answer that, but I can tell you this, that I feel that it also depends on have they taken, so when they're doing the A-levels, for instance, what are the subjects that they're taking in, right? So I think it depends on that, and then second, I feel, to be very honest with you, most of them just want this to be a requirement, and the university has I think has the capacity to give a waiver for this. So you can, the student can ask. What I've seen many of the times, that if you're actually, able to ask that question to the university directly, many of them would be able to come back to you and say yes or no to that. But I think Megha has a point to mention. Please, go ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Dhaval. So Sheetal ma'am, to your question, when it comes to York, we definitely give an IELTS waiver if a student is from the CBSE or ICSE board, and also for IB and, British curriculum. So the waiver is definitely there, and it, differs from university to university. So I'm talking in perspective to York, but like Dhaval rightly said, that there are a lot of institutions in Canada, that have an IELTS waiver in place. Now, it also depends also going forward in terms of when you're looking at the visa route. Now, if you're going through the SDS stream, definitely, IELTS becomes mandatory for you. But then we've seen most of the students from IB and British curriculum also take the non-SDS route. So if you have an IELTS waiver there, you can very well go ahead and file your application. So I hope, from York's perspective, I've answered your question.
Yeah, but thanks so much, Megha, for that reassurance. But however, there is a problem with the visa. So even if the university does say that, okay, we are fine if the child has taken EFL, English as a first language, so we really don't need the IELTS, but the student gets stuck in the visa process. So my only recommendation or a request, I can just request, if when we get the admission grant, that the admission letter, can we somehow factor in an IL waiver letter which the visa office will be able to honor? So is there some way that, the university and the visa, like everybody should be on the same platform? Visa has one requirement, university has one, and the student and the counselors and the parents are just oscillating between the university and the visa office, trying to get, everything sorted, which is not very fair on the student.
Ma'am, I completely get your point, and that's why I said that, like there are two visa streams right now when it comes to Canada. So I think, the only complication that happens is that if I'm a student from India and I've got an IELTS waiver and I want to go through the SDS stream, you would still have, because a lot of students, would have advisors within the school, would also be consulting advisors outside the school. And the usual advice that till date goes out is that if you're going through the SDS stream, even if you have an IELTS waiver, get an IELTS score in place, right? For the non-SDS stream, there is no confusion whatsoever. Like if you have an IELTS waiver, we've seen most of the students, like I told you, from IB and British curriculum going with the non-SDS stream. There have been talks, like, because this is one point that we keep going back to our international offices and mentioning that, we can and we do, even in our email correspondences, mention that there's an IELTS waiver. Now, and one of the reasons that we, are very limited in terms of talking in terms of how the outcome of the visa would be, because if we tell the student that, okay, you've got an IELTS waiver, go and apply through the SDS, and if the student doesn't get the visa, then it comes back, to the university. So the general advice is always that if you're going for SDS, have an IELTS score in place, and you would see that students usually get that IELTS score, in hand if they're looking at SDS. And I completely get your point that, if there is, the same communication between the university, the school, the student and the High Commission, that even for the SDS stream, like if there is some kind of a documentation, which is always there with the student in form of an email or an acknowledgement from the university. The point is that the High Commission needs to, start acknowledging that. So I think we keep pushing from our side, but then there is no official communication yet from the High Commission. And that's one of the reasons why students refrain, from filing the SDS, the visa through the SDS stream without the IELTS. That's what my experience has been in this, sector. Been working in this Canadian education segment for close to about 4 years now. And
to answer that part, sorry, just to answer that part, Sheila, the UK, you don't have that issue because, UK, US take TOEFL, right? And, TOEFL online is so, I know that IELTS came out with an exam online, but that didn't work out for them. And so they weren't able to replace that, in a sense where, even the visa officials or the High Commission was accepting that. But TOEFL does have that in place. So actually, everyone's typically taking the TOEFL online at this point in time. So if you're still looking at UK and US, your students can still take the TOEFL. It's only as far as Canada is concerned is where you can be sort of, a little bit more concerned. Again, I think Megha's already shared the route that if you're doing an SDS or non-SDS route, you still have an option. So you still have that as an option. But yeah, I mean, I think that if there's any other support you require on that, we'd be happy to help you out. If there's any visa issues also, because we are actually tied up with FCM Travels, which is, very sort of, good at the entire visa processing. I mean, we're doing about 400 or we were doing about 400 visas in a year. So it was already a fairly, large portion of it that, FCM was doing for us. So I would have definitely suggested that they're very good at being able to, get all of this documentation and get things in place. Australia has a slightly different process, and I'm sure if there's any when you get to it, if you need any help, we'd be able to help you on that as well. I think we haven't heard from any of the other counselors. Aparna, who's from CMS, and I think we have Manisha also. If any questions you all have, please, if you all can't even, if you all having trouble in terms of the audio and you all want to type it in also, happy to hear from you all as well. Great. So I don't think we have any questions right now, but I think we're close to the end of the session, and maybe I want to take some time to thank every one of you all to be here. I have benefited immensely from this session, and thank you so much, Anushri, Megha, Sagar, Kajari, and Sheetal. Thank you again very much. And yeah, I think I saw the point made that, the IELTS is what you require even for Australia, if I didn't mention that. Thank you very much. And we hope we can continue this dialogue with more counselors, and please be happy to reach us for anything else that you require. Very happy to help you all at any point. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, everyone.
Excellent team. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks.